Hello and welcome to the second half as the whistle blows. Again, sorry, the bell in the pub rings for the final round of drinking. So let's look in the result of the March of Madness and how they all happened before the final league matches left to play to go before the first team season is over. And and as well as looking at the upcoming fixtures in April and followed by the reserves matches as well. Okay, so let's look at the recent results as the first team as follows. We start with the 1st of March against Tottenham Women Academy in the Capital Senior Cup match, which they lost 2-1. And then a week later, they played against QPR, which people already know they hate the most, with a bounce back win of 2-1. And followed by 2 week break, which they played against MK Dons with a 1-0 loss, and followed by a home match, which recently they won 1-0. Now, the first team are currently 8th place with 7 wins, 2 draws, and 10 losses, and mathematically are guaranteed to play another season in the National League after Chester United and AFC Sudbury are relegated with 3 and 2 games left to play. And also, we want to say our congratulations to Fulham Women who have won the title with 2 games left to play. So congratulations to them as they move up to the National League. So best of luck to them of the new season for 2026-27. Plus, Norwich have qualified for the playoff against opponent from Southwest Division, Swindon Town or Mansfield, which either of the two they will face on later, but that's a story for another time. But first, let's get back to this season, Richie. So, has it been challenging for you since you stepped up after Maria left? And did you have to navigate through matches that are difficult and some you have to see through regardless if you're winning or not?
Managing any group of people in any discipline is always going to be challenging because no group of people are the same. So each person has their own pros and cons, their own strengths and weaknesses, their own sort of inhibitions and their own experiences that makes them quite unique. And the pressure that's on a manager and the skill of a manager is to try and amalgamate everybody together as best as possible to get the best overall performance for the group. And that's the toughest part. You know, each player that's in our squad individually is a good player. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at the club. So they're all good players, but how do we get the best out of each player and put them in the right position with the right tactic to give the team the best chance of winning the team that we're playing against each week? And each team we play against changes. So each strength and weaknesses of each player becomes different and becomes more or less viable for them to be in the starting lineup. And that's why it's important to have a squad because you need different types of players depending on who you're playing against. So, you know, it's a bit of a juggling act because as a manager, you're caught in between a rock and a hard place because you have the players below you who you need to manage, and you have the club above you who you need to get results for. So the manager is almost the go-between. So it's a tough job, and I've done it before and I've made mistakes at other clubs. And you know, you learn from them and you bring them into the next job and the next group of players. And I would say that the hardest part about being a manager of people is having the skill to deal with different types of people. And unfortunately, in sport, you can have the best plan in the world, but if the other team do something different, your plan goes out the window and you have to change it. So you have to be able to react. So you have to be preemptive and reactive at the same time. And you have to be able to change a plan on the spot. And you have to be able to see a problem and you have to be able to see a solution as well. So there's a lot that goes into being a manager of a football team. And even something as simple as the wind can change a game. So things like this all have to be factored in, and you have to be able to navigate that. But that comes from experience. And luckily, I have a fair bit of experience with weather playing in Scotland. And there's a lot of different things that I can pull on in terms of experience with people and players and opposition. I've played against all different types of teams and types of managers and types of people, and you learn quite a lot. And the key to being successful in the sport of football is learning who you're up against and seeing where their weakness is, and that's a very big skill. And I've been on the receiving end of that as well. There was a time in my career when I wasn't playing very well, and the opposition used to play on me. They used to say, "Just lob it over his head and he'll make a mistake and he'll give us a goal." So I've been there. So when I say these things to the players, it's because I've experienced literally every part of the game. So it's about being able to bestow that information to players and give it to them in a way that they can actually digest and understand and then put to use. And hopefully remember the mistakes they made and remember the lessons that we teach them, and that aids them in the next game and the rest of their career.
Yeah. I mean, as far as what I've seen, for the last 3 months, we're coming up to April. I think, there are some good positive signs going in that direction. And to be honest, I know like what was it in the beginning, it might not have started as good as what it was expected, but when you stepped up, you knew about what the fans were gonna think and what the players were like thinking. I don't know what we were gonna do, but at least you made a contingency of the plan of just to assemble what players you have and what may or may not fit in your system, but also at the same time, like, there's gonna be, have you ever heard the phrase of kill your darlings or not much?
No, no, go on, say that again.
So it's like, you want to keep something, but sometimes you have to let go to
Yeah,
make room or to sacrifice to in order to make sure you're moving in the direction that you want to envision. Then
yeah,
like, like having like some players who may not get chances that would have to, to seek somewhere else, but
yeah,
only like, whatever what the plan they want to do, if that fits going in that way, but also at the same time, like, players and everyone is different to another, and it's about like making choices, is it?
yeah. Well, this is it. You, as a manager, you're going to have to make tough choices. As a player, you're going to have to make some choices too, because you're going to have to either decide to do what needs to be done or don't do it and allow somebody else to do the job, which is going to result in you being on the bench or being dropped from the squad. So, this the sport is tough. This sport is very tough because fans of every club always tend to expect more than what's on offer from their team. And we always want more. Everybody wants more. The fans want more, the players want more, the club want more. We all want overachievement. And it's up to us as players and background staff and management to try and supply that. And we've always got to see improvement, whether it be on the pitch or off the pitch. We want people to grow as human beings as well as improve on the pitch. So we're always looking to push the players in every way that we can. Yeah, it's been a good few months so far. And again, we expect more improvement. They've done very well. I have to say, the players have done really, really well. They've taken on a lot of information. There's been a lot of information given to them, and they've taken it on very, very well. Look, they're not going to be perfect, and no player is perfect. So they've done excellently so far, and I do think that with a good few more months of learning, they'll be a really good team.
And Joe, what did you think of the matches for the first team so far for the first, well, say the last 3, 4 months? And
Well,
do you think that after Richie stepped in, and whether or not matches going away or not, but do you see some improvements, like in terms of what they were doing, and sometimes they tried.
yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been defensively. I think that we've always been sound and very solid. It's just that even now we probably should be scoring more goals, and I think our top scorer is probably maybe Ria, and I don't know. There's probably two players who scored 4 goals this season. So at the top end of the pitch, basically we're very solid at the back. We've got a really good defence. We're very controlled at the back the way we play. As I said, our problem probably is that we don't really finish teams off when we don't put teams to the sword, and. Yeah, so that would be my one little gripe. Since Richie's come in, he's done a fantastic job. I think that everybody's happy. It's a good camp to be around. When you go on the training coach, everybody's like taking in the information, and also the reserves have got some very decent players, could um, who could challenge the first team. As you had Ayala yesterday, she started out of reserves, and to me, she was the best player on the pitch. So. And Richie had moved her from a fullback to a central midfield player, which he wasn't overly happy about. So what he's done then, he's seen something in her that thought you could be a central midfield player. So and as it is, it's always football in general, don't matter who you are, is always a work in progress. You can always improve. But there has been, I think, we were in a situation at the beginning of the season where we could have been in a relegation dogfight, and we've managed to put ourselves clear from that, which is, and as I said again, once again, we're looking to progress on from there. We're looking to build probably now. Richie's probably, the season's not over, but now, as they say, one game at a time. But I think that a lot of people would be quite excited to look forward to next season, and hopefully, at some point, we hope and pray that Summer Roberts returns at some point. I mean, you can't replace somebody who scores 24 goals at that, especially the level that we're at. They're just not around. Those type of people are not around. It'd be good. And once again, Richie was talking about injury. Will she be the same player that she was before? We don't know. We don't know till she walks onto a football pitch and if she gets 7 or 8 games under her belt, because obviously she's got a hip. Her injury wasn't even football related; it was a hip injury. So we don't know. But it'd be great to have her because she's a great character in and around the squad as well. Because sometimes people look at the footballer, just the player on the pitch, but it's got to do with the characters and the ethos is what Dulwich have built, what the women's team have built over many years with Lucy, with Salon, with Erin. They're like, so when people come in, they're always welcomed in, even though their own places, are on the threat. So I always think that's the great thing about Dulwich, that they've got a really good ethos, and the girls might have to step out of the team, out of the limelight, not even get minutes, because you've always have to build as a coach or a manager. You always every team wants better players in their team. Doesn't matter who you are, what position you play. You'll always find in the end somebody come along and take your position. So as I said, to me, we're building in the right direction, and it'd be all we want now is a good end to the season, which hopefully we'll get.
And Big Al, are you still there?
I am.
What do you think of the recent matches for the last few months, and what do you think of Richie stepping in?
Well, I mean, I think we started the season actually quite promisingly, but losing sort of 5 games out of 6, and actually that sort of heavy defeat at Sudbury, who, as you said, were relegated with games to spare, was probably the nadir, and that was the time when the club decided that a change was needed. I think the fact that Richie was actually working with the team, during that period, that might well have helped sort of facilitate the change of role that he took on. He would be seeing the players that he was now going to manage. He would see their strengths and weaknesses, not just from a strength and conditioning perspective, but also what they were producing on the pitch. And, would have his own ideas about how the team could move. And, it's clear that the results have improved since then. The players do look more confident. There seems to be, more structure in what the team is trying to do. Now that relegation isn't going to happen, and I know that there's definitely an objective to finish as high as possible, but there's also, I think, an argument for saying that if we're going to plan for next season and progress, that if we have identified players that are perhaps playing for the reserves that we think could make the step up, now might be the time where we give them a chance in the last few games of the season to play at a slightly higher level, just to give Richie an idea of whether he thinks that step up from the couple of divisions below that they're in at the moment, whether they can make that step up. And even if you discover that that's not the case, that's still useful information going forward, and it can inform planning for next season. But I think the women's team is on an upward curve, and I think that's important. Certainly, around Christmas time, there would have been quite a concern that we could easily get dragged into a relegation struggle, which is not where the club wants to be. So definitely progress is being made, and hopefully that progress continues next season.
Well, before we get to all the matches we'll wrap up to date, let's look at the first Sunday of the March, where we had the Capital Senior Cup match rearranged against Tottenham Women Academy, the same opponent that Dulwich beat them last year semi-finals en route to the final, which they lost to Arsenal Women's Academy narrowly. But I remember on that first of Sunday, I was coming from Norfolk playing the games, which wasn't really that great. But I came in and missed the first half an hour before I heard Tottenham had a lead, and it stayed like that until half time. But Tottenham doubled the lead, however, in the second half. I don't know how many minutes was it, before the late goal from Maria and Eduardo, the Brazilian twins, pulled one back, but before it was too late, that Dulwich got eliminated, which, I know, that goes the last chance of a piece of silverware. And to be honest, everyone, maybe for some, were all feeling down. Richie, how do you summarize on that game?
Well, that was a game we should have won. I counted 10 chances in the second half that we could have scored from. We absolutely battered them. Yeah, they had a spell where they were good on the ball. We gave away a poor goal, and we controlled a little bit of the game. They get into the ascendancy, and they showed that they're a pro team, and they kept possession. But again, it wasn't anything special that we should have been worried about. And we had so many chances to score. We hit one off the crossbar that should have been followed in and tucked away as well. And multiple chances, multiple flashes across the goal. And we didn't finish them off. So that was, as Joe was saying, you need finishing. It's a big important part of the game. That's why strikers go for so much money. It's the hardest thing to do in the game. And that's the name of the game, to score goals. The name of the game is not possession. The objective is to put the ball in the opponent's net as many times as you can and stop them from doing the same to you. So it was a good learning experience as well for some of them. Some of us, some of the players, I think sometimes we think we can just go on the pitch and it's just going to happen. We're just going to win. But you have to be ruthless. And that was a very good lesson about being ruthless. And you have to finish your chances. And you have to be mean on the pitch. You can be as nice as you want off the pitch, but you got to be mean on the pitch. So that was a game that we should have won. It was a disappointment to lose that. They had a couple of dangerous players, but we nullified them quite well, and we let them in two areas. And we were also down a couple of players. We had a few injuries for that game in key positions. We had Jody out, and I think we had one of our midfielders out as well. So we were down a little bit. We had a couple of players that hadn't been in training. We had to put them in. And we had quite a young team as well. So there was a couple of young players playing that game. So all in all, look, it wasn't a bad performance. There was just decision making could have been a little bit better. And unfortunately, yeah, we didn't make it to the next round. But that's football, that's the game. We'll take it into next season and we'll use it as a learning curve.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I have saw some reaction, Joe. What do you think of, that match? And I know the aftermath was mixed. I mean, some would try and, cheer themselves up, but not everyone felt the same way, like, really, right?
Yeah, so that's football. I mean, as Richie just said, you have to. If the ball comes off the bar, people need to react quicker. People need to second guess where they think the ball might land. I think that's probably one of our problems, actually, where people don't make the near post run, don't make the far post run. Because the ball might only drop to you once out of 10 times you do it, but eventually it will fall for you to be in the right position. So that would be, players not really being alive after after first after the first phase of play. You've got to hope that the ball was going to drop to you somewhere, and that's what we kind of miss a bit of a cut, which cost you games, in the long run. It just cost you games, and you players, and it's a team responsibility. It's not just one individual, but a lot of players just seem to switch off once that phase of play is over, and not react to the second phase of play or even third phase of play. So I think that's where we need to be looking forward to, to improve, to score more goals.
Yeah. And
So.
Big Al, what was your reaction to that loss? And did anyone, your fellow fans, said what did they think of from their perspective?
I mean, I wasn't in London that weekend. That was actually the weekend I was on my cricket tour at Malta, so I didn't go to the game. But obviously, having beaten Spurs in the semi-final last year, I'm sure hopes were sort of high for a repeat. Actually, a mate of mine sent me a video of his niece who scored that brilliant goal for Spurs. And she's also scored other goals of that quality this season. So, that's what you're up against when you're talking about, the academy of a club the size of Spurs. And sometimes you have to hold your hands up and say, yeah, that was well played. They scored a goal, a worldie, and we missed chances that we would have hoped to have taken. But the mere fact that Hamlet can compete with a club that has the resources of Spurs, I think is admirable in the first place. And I think we should be proud that we were able to come off that pitch feeling like we could have beaten them or should have beaten them.
Yeah.
When logically you might expect the Spurs women to be stronger. So not having seen the game, I still think the result was close enough, and the chances that we had were sufficient to perhaps have given us a better result.
Yeah. I mean, that game was, I'd say, not as unforgettable, but I think for some, we could have won that game and to have a last chance of silverware, but you know, that's just the nature of the beautiful game of football. You win some, you lose some, but some players may feel different emotions after. But if they're like not in the mood to like to talk about anything, like to cheer themselves, which it's understandable, but I'm always make sure, they're always there, like I'm there for them no matter what, as well as like everybody else is here. So after that first game, or the first on the 1st of March, we move on to the bounce back on the International Women's Day, that they won 2-1 against QPR, who most fans remember a lot of hatred against towards them. As Keane said in the previous episode, that this is one of the matches he wanted to see Dulwich win as bad as he needed it. At first glance, it was going to be goalless. Leading up to the half time, I thought it was going to be the same like that after door knocking opportunities, close calls, and some big sitters until Lila, is that how you say?
Taylor.
Layla. Layla Emerson poked in a goal to break in the deadlock with 10 minutes left to play. If one goal wasn't enough, Esme Johnson, sponsored by Dulwich Hamlets fans on Facebook, doubled the lead a few minutes before QPR pulled back one goal as a consolation, which didn't stop Dulwich from getting a win. Richie, was that game better when it seemed like it was almost going to be a goalless until Lila and Esme got the goals very late?
Yeah, that game we were always a little bit dangerous. Some very good moves. and a good performance again. We kept the ball miles better in that game. And I think for their goal, it was our mistake, which tends to happen for a lot of the goals you can see it. So yeah, it was our mistake for the goal. So it should have been 2-0. It could have been 3 or 4 as well if we had taken some other good opportunities. But again, it was as long as it's a good, strong performance and we are clinical when we have the chance, we'll win more games than not, you know. So I have to be very happy with the performance of the team. And yeah, as you raise the caliber of opponent, a half a mistake can result in a goal. So yeah, you can't even make a half a mistake because there's players out there that can do that. They can turn quick and take a shot, and it can go into the top corner like it did against us. And unfortunately, they're very hard to save. So yeah, you can't do anything about that.
And Joe, I know you were with the reserves in that game at the same day or the similar time, which we'll discuss later. But what did you think of, that game, especially that derby against QPR, that, what it means for any Pepper Army fans out there? That win feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, especially against QPR, as you know, we've got a bit of history with Queen's Park Rangers. When during lockdown we was riding high in the table, and they got promoted over us. I don't know if you know the history of that story. Yeah, so and there's always been that little edge. So they promoted QPR because they said they had better facilities than us, and they were fifth in the league, I believe, at the time that the league was cancelled. So it's always nice to get one over QPR, So and they're always really, they're the games you look forward to, like really good competitive games, and they're the games. Well, you want to win every game, but there are one or two games that you think when you get the fixture list. That's one of the games. The other game would be Fulham that you kind of think, obviously we won't be playing Fulham next season, but they're the games that you look forward to. Norwich now, and so they're the games that you want to win, and it's always good to get one over your local rival. In particular, the history of the two clubs. Having said that, their coaching staff stayed at the bar till 9 o'clock at night because Queen's Park Rangers, I think they were playing Middlesbrough, wasn't they, in the FA Cup that day? So they were still there till 9 o'clock in the evening. Those were really, really nice guys, all of them, So I told them I hated their team, but the coaching staff was quite nice, so I know, but they were generally nice people, yeah. So yeah, and it's as I said, like local derbies is what you look forward to.
And Big Al, what do you think of the game, for yourself with that better winning feeling? What do you think?
Obviously, as Joe mentions, QPR is now a bit of a grudge match. That decision of the league deciding that, promotion was going to be awarded on a points per game basis, and yet QPR being promoted with an inferior points per game to Dulwich made no logical sense at all. And while that may not be QPR's fault, it certainly has engendered a rivalry between the two clubs. And so beating them obviously is particularly satisfying. And especially as I did think we were second best in the first half in some ways. But we stayed in the game and then grew into the game in the second period and deserved to be ahead. And fortunately, by 2 goals, so that's another stunning strike from the visiting team, like we'd had against Spurs the week before, came too late to affect the result. And it always makes me chuckle when people say how dangerous a 2-0 lead is in football compared, it's the sort of lead you don't want. I absolutely want a 2-0 lead in football because if somebody then hits a worldie in the later stages of the game, you're still going to get out with the win. If you're only 1 goal ahead, you can dominate a game, and then when you get a goal like that, you end up with a draw. So, we have had a propensity this month to concede goals that sometimes you just have to say, that is a great strike. I know that from Richie's perspective, as any manager would always look at what we might have done better to prevent it. But, sometimes, the opposition are allowed to play well. Fortunately, we played sufficiently well in the second half to get ourselves, into a position where a goal like that was a consolation in the end.
And after that, with 2 weeks break, as there was no match on the 15th of March, otherwise that would have been in the next round of the Capital Senior Cup. But anyways, let's go straight into the next game, which is against MK Dons, all the way in Milton Keynes. And I kept an eye out on social media and the Facebook updates, and I saw MK Dons scored a goal, well, their goal at 7 minutes before half time. It remained like that until the very end. Richie, what was that like in Stadium MK? And was that MK Dons were hard to break down, or was something like something around there wasn't clicking?
That's probably one of our worst performances in possession since we took charge. And I think, look, that's due to a bit of naivety. Probably some of us trying too hard to impress and to wanting to do so well that we end up not doing so well. And that sort of let them out of jail a little bit. We controlled the ball quite a lot, and they knew our strengths and they played to contain our strengths, which is fine. But we still had a lot of chances to get goals, and if we had to pick the right option, we would have got them. And in the last couple of minutes as well, in the flurry, we could have nicked a couple of goals as well. You know, Jordan had a great chance, you know, to volley in from a great cross from the our left hand side. And then, you know, their goal was very disappointing. It was a very, very disappointing goal to concede because it's very preventable. Yeah, it was a good strike. The girl knuckleballed it. You know, she knuckleballed it from 35 yards, 40 yards. But I think there was a lot of things that could have happened. We could have prevented a free kick as well, and we know what we should have done for that. And again, players will learn from that. But we could have followed up, and I think that was probably the main issue is the follow up. You know, there's a couple of things that went wrong that we've all learned from over the past week. There's been a bit of sort of ruffling the feathers in the squad because some of the goals you conceded, particularly that goal. There's a few people could have done different jobs. And you know, these things happen, but as long as the team learns and we've come back and they've all performed very, very well the week after. But you know, again, going to MK Dons, really seeing they looked like they were afraid of us in their home ground on that big pitch. And for us to come so far from where we were at the start of the season before Christmas, to come from that sort of feeling and setup to go in there and have an MK Dons pretty much afraid of us and holding on for dear life the last 10 minutes of the game, that's a big step up. So it says a lot about the team and the players. They've done very, very well. And even though we were so poor on that day, we still created those chances. We created more chances than MK Dons did by far. They have really had one chance, and that was the free kick, and that was the goal they scored. Apart from that, they really didn't have anything. And we had a lot more possession in dangerous areas, just didn't pick the right option again. So there's a lot that the players can be proud of, and they have to take a lot of confidence from that. And that's what I said to them as well. There was a lot of good stuff, even though we were disappointed. For us to be so disappointed to come away from MK Dons away says a lot about the team and what they've done in the last few months.
And Joe and Big Al, I mean, when you saw the results of that match, you know, you would think, you know, Dulwich, I mean, sometimes, you know, when you win some last week and you lose some the next week, which, you know, is again, football life of cycle that you win some, you lose some. But do you think that it could have been any different? Like, you know, if Dulwich could have overcome something like that, or sometimes it's unavoidable?
Yeah, so what I would say is that I always feel a little bit nervous when we go a goal behind because then we have to score 2 goals to win the game, and that's not to berate the players who play or whatever, but we just don't score enough goals in general. You know, I think that's my one concern. So when they went 1-0 up, was following it on while I was around the training ground watching the reserves play. You know, you always worry a little bit about. Hopefully, we can get an equaliser, get a point. But you know, as I said, it's an issue that probably needs to be resolved a little bit. We dominate games. We have the chances, but we just don't score the goals. I mean, as I said earlier, I think Ria might be our top scorer. Although there might be three or four players on 3 goals now. If you're looking to win games week in, week out, progress next season, then you need people. You need somebody who's going to get you at least 10 to 12 goals a season. We've got nowhere near that. So that's my one concern, really. You know, so it doesn't matter who we play. I know, obviously, I wasn't at the MK Dons game, but I heard it was a massive stadium and the pitch was amazing. But I said goals win football games.
Yeah. How?
Well, I'm going to say that, you know, MK away wasn't on my dance card particularly. I was actually very keen to go to the reserves game that Joe mentioned against Clapton instead for reasons that I'll elaborate on when we talk about the reserves. But, you know, life gets in the way sometimes. But so from watching the highlights, and I appreciate, obviously, Richie, you know, watching the game as the manager and all 90 minutes of it would have a very different perception than I could have by just watching highlights. It did seem quite a tight, close game. And I thought, actually, that the shot, albeit from distance, was a really good long-range effort that I thought Zara did well to save initially. But as Joe emphasised about the rebound from the crossbar in the Spurs game, where you know you have to anticipate those sort of scenarios happening, you know, we weren't able to stop MK scoring from the rebound, and you know, in that sort of game, that one goal can be the decisive one, as we're not a team that you know, does score lots of goals. We're very well organised defensively, but we don't have, you know, that X factor striker perhaps that you know, some are used to be, and then, as Joe says, when we go behind it, it can be an uphill battle. I mean, from the highlights, there was a good chance at the back post, but you know, that seemed to be as close as we got to an equaliser, and you know, it didn't seem like, even if we dominated possession, that we necessarily looked like scoring an equaliser, which obviously you have to do in the first place to go on to win the game. But you know, if Richie thinks that that's one of their worst performances of the season, then you know, that's a positive in a way, because obviously we were still in the game, you know, right until the end.
Yeah. So the next part I was going to say is, you know, the Sunday just gone, on the last Sunday of the month, that we got a win against ASC Sudbury thanks to Lila Emerson again, bouncing back so strongly before Easter break comes in. Richie, did you enjoy that match? And I'm sorry I couldn't able to come to that game, but really thought, you know, I really thought everyone really did brilliantly, so superbly. And, you know, what was that like?
It was very good performance. So that's one of the happiest I've been in terms of how everybody played. I think, you know, the whole 11 and the subs that come on did very well. And a couple of people, there was a couple of standout players, but there was 5 or 6 standout players. You always have 1 or 2, but there was about 5 or 6 standout players that were really, really good. A lot of learning. And I'm very happy for them. I'm very happy for some of the players that have done so well, because it's been a grueling season for some of them. And to get that type of performance out of them at this stage of the season was really, really, really good. So, you know, I'm very happy for them all. And, you know, it was good to finish off the week, because they had a tough week in training. There was a few things that happened in training that made it quite tough for the whole squad, and the squad came through and dealt with it all very, very well. And as a group of people, they've all banded together and realised what the important things are in football and as a team and in life, you know. So it's been very positive end to the week. So we were all delighted with them. And again, delighted for Layla to get the goal. And also a couple of offside flags that on review of the tape seemed to be not offside. So the one that Layla actually scored definitely didn't seem to be offside to us. from the tape that we reviewed. So that could have been 2-0. And then one that Jess was through, that could have been 3-0. So, I think it could have been a more convincing win if the decisions had went our way. But they got through, and there was spells in the game that the other team, Sudbury, were very, very dangerous with some very dangerous free kicks and corner kicks that we did very well to defend. So, I'm delighted with them all as a group.
And Joe and Al, what do you think of the match?
Yeah, well, we dominated in large parts, but what I would say defensively, I thought we was excellent, especially the amount of free kicks that they have and the way we dealt with it was probably, we deserved the win, and we defended excellently. Everybody, I thought it was probably our best team performance in many ways. We had the chances, obviously, the offsides were, from where I was, were absolutely ridiculous, absolutely terrible decisions. And not that you want to berate referees, but yeah, I just think that, we played well, and Ayala in midfield, as said, she didn't, I think speaking to people there, she didn't even want to play in midfield because she was originally a right back, I believe, she was a right back when she played for the reserves. And they had to convince her, or Richie convinced her. Richie seen something in her that he could move her to midfield, and she was, to me, the most dominant force on the pitch yesterday. She had an excellent game. As long as and then because I was saying to people yesterday when they do this player of the match, I said, yeah, but we get used to people like Jodie always being 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So the same with Asia, the same with Erin. So they never get player of the match anymore because they're looking at the younger group. But they're just as effective, as efficient. If they was young, 18 or 19, they'd probably win player of the match. So I'm very much against player of the match actually because it's just a matter of opinion. And but everybody, what it is, we've come to expect a high standard from particularly the defence because they're always good. So it was a good all-round team performance. Once again, you'd like to see a couple more goals, which is the missing part of the jigsaw puzzle, really.
And Al, how do you think of the game?
So I was actually impressed with Sudbury. I think they were better than I'd expected, for a team that was already relegated. And, Richard said that the game we played there, in late November, which was probably, say, the nadir of our season, we lost that 4-1. And so the two games that Sudbury have played against us, I think they've been... They can't have played like that all season, otherwise they wouldn't have been relegated with games to spare. Yes, they had a lot of balls into our box, but again, it emphasises the progress I think we've made defensively and organisationally. That I really didn't think that they threatened to equalise particularly, especially once we'd taken the lead. And the flip side of us wanting to score more goals is that if we do take the lead in the game, I think we're more than capable of seeing it out. And the defensive shape of the team and performance is solid. And that's not. If you're not going to score a lot of goals, you need to make sure that you don't concede them. And many a team, that wins trophies and championships is built, from the back. So again, if we can just find that X factor up front. And, when decisions don't go your way, then, yes, a 1-0 looks like a narrow victory when it might have been 2 or 3. But the important thing in many ways is the nil. You never lose a game in a league match anyway if you don't concede a goal. So I think that's important. And I think that's definitely progress from, what was happening at the end of last year.
So let's move on to the next question. April's just literally around the corner, and by the time this episode comes out, by April, it will be April Fools or later or something like that. As the following games, the first team we're going to list is the final 3. One of which is against Norwich City on the 12th of April at home, followed by another home game against Cheltenham Town, which is the final one on the 15th, about 3 days later. And a week and a half later, they all played against Actians on the 26th of April. I normally ask players in the previous episodes what really caught their eye the most in one of the matches, but Richie, you don't really have any game that has caught your attention, or you just took it one game at a time.
Yeah, we take it one game at a time. I'm always like that. I just got to focus on the next one. Obviously, the next game we have is a very big game. Norwich, top of the league. So it's going to be a tough game. We've got to use that game to show what we're made of. So I know they're still looking to be competitive because they have a pretty much a cup final to play. They've got a playoff. So they've got to sharpen their swords and be ready for the game that they're going to have to play. So they're not going to come around to our place and take it easy. They're going to be all guns blazing. So we have to be ready to put a performance up, and the players that play have to show that they can play against top teams because that's the type of people I expect to have at this club that can compete against top teams. And we want to give a good account of ourselves. So we'll be working very hard over the next couple of weeks to be able to perform well that day. But that obviously that's the next game, and then we'll see what happens in the couple after. But I really don't look too far ahead. I literally just think about what happened before, we can improve on, and then who we play next and how we're going to beat them. That's all I think about really.
Yeah, I definitely think you don't really think about any matches far ahead. But Joe, Big Al, is there any match or matches that's caught your attention? Like in one of the matches you can summarize?
Yeah, obviously the next game, Norwich City, a big club. They absolutely. What was the score? Well, I know we lost that. Was it 4-1 or 4-0 or something, wasn't it?
I think it
So
was 1-0.
was it? Was it 1-0? I can't remember now. But I went there last year. I didn't go this year because I was working this year. So yeah, so we lost. Oh yeah, of course it was. Yeah, it was 1-0. Yeah. So, but that's where you kind of gauge where we are when you play the teams at the top. That's where you. This is where you say this is where we need to be to compete. So you look forward to the big games, like the teams that are doing they're at the top for a reason because they win quite a lot of games and that's what you want. So it'd be a good barometer for Richie to have a look at to see where we might need to be next season. Yeah, so
And
obviously the Norwich game, I would say obviously the next game again is the most important.
and Al?
I mean, I can only emphasise what Richie and Joe said in that, yeah, the next game is also the most important one. But also, if you look at the fixtures, Norwich City as a name in football is that appeals. I mean, I always enjoy us playing against clubs that have a much stronger men's team than our men's team to see if we can match them in the women's game. And Norwich being where they are in the league. Having said earlier that now that we are safe in mid-table and no danger of relegation, that we might want to give maybe the odd promising reserve player a chance in the first team. I wouldn't be doing that necessarily in this game. I think we need to, as Joe said, and Richie will concentrate as well, I'm sure, on showing our best selves against Norwich and seeing where we measure up and where we may need to improve. And then because we have a game 3 days later, that might be a time when freshening the team up might be a more appropriate policy, and there may be a couple of changes there. Again, though, every single game you play, you really don't know until that game finishes, and sometimes not until after that, who's even going to be available for the next game because of what can happen in 90 minutes of football. So, yeah, Norwich is definitely the one that I'm keen on going to. But the flip side of that, as we'll come on to, is the reserve team game on the same day.
Well, yes, which I was going to say, I bring up the updates on the spicy reserves now and look into the recent matches as follows. They played the first game against Greenwich Borough away with a 7-2 loss, which that was really deep cutthroat. But followed by they played 2 home wins on the bounce. one of which was against Acteon Reserves with a 2-all draw, which I heard they had a 2-0 lead before Acteons pulled back 2 consolation goals to pull back by a point. And finally, at home, the last game they played against Clapton CFC, infamous rivals, with a 1-0 win, in which I heard my coach, Emily Ord, has scored the only goal to win the game. And then when April comes around, the next league matches are listed as follows. They play Clapton again away on the 12th of April, followed by a week later against Camden Town on the 19th of April, and followed by a home game against Hackney on the 26th of April. They are currently 8th place with 7 wins, 1 draw, and 8 losses, and already guaranteed to play another year in the Laser Waffle League, which Kian and other people might have called it before, how very hard to get out of it was. Joe, you have been to the matches wherever the reserves are at home, or whenever, say, you can, if it doesn't clash with the first team fixtures at home, but when the first team are away and the reserves are playing at home, you will still, be there, even if the first team are playing or not. But how do you think the Spurs reserves have been doing so far, from your perspective?
Do you know what? They play really good football, and to be fair, a lot of the times they're playing like with a shoestring tips, like loads of players have been injured, not being able to play. So it's very different. In the 7-2 game, I believe that that they were short of players. They didn't have enough players to actually. I'm not even sure if they had a sub, but you have to remember that sometimes that's where the reserves are, because that's just football. We're at that reserve level. What I would say is, in the 2-all draw, we was winning 2-0. We was close in the game. Cisse scored the best goal I've seen this season. She just whacked the ball from 30 yards up, and it dipped up and over the goalkeeper. So that's my favourite goal of the season. And once again, it can't be a work in progress, because they simply sometimes struggle to field a team. So that's far one thing. They're struggling for players a lot of the weeks through injury. They have a couple of really, really talented players in that team. One is Emily Old, who's just recovered from an ACL. She definitely could challenge for a first team place, but I don't think that she's that interested. I think it might have to do with her workload and stuff, stuff like that. But where the reserves go training once a week, so they go on a Wednesday night, and the women's first team train Wednesday and Thursday. So there's always like different parts of it that you can't get right. Yeah, but generally they're really good. So what? So sometimes you can't delve too much into the performance. I know that Helen was devastated by the 7-2 loss, but they didn't have a full team out, but they just had to make do with what they had on that night. And sometimes it's like a bit misleading, because they don't always get their best 13, 14 players fit and available, or some of them might go on holiday, some of them might go for breaks. So we Dulwich Women's reserves have to work their way around that, so they just work with what they've actually got on the day.
And Richie, you have seen the reserves at training, whenever the first team are training at the same time. Have you seen some of the reserves players that you have noticed who have come up and played some of the games with you recently, with Helen's permission, of course, but what do you think of the reserves team as a whole?
Yeah, well, the main function of a reserve team is to play as well as you can, so you can get a chance in the first team. And the door is always open to reserve team players coming up and playing with us and training with us. So if there's anything that we like, we're always monitoring, and we look to closely monitor it next season, because it's better to always have people in your camp that can just come in and slot in to the way we play, and they understand the style and what's expected. So, we'd rather promote from within than have to go outside and source players. So, it's up to the players to do their best to show that they can come in and compete for a place, and they can play at the level that's expected and do the job that's expected. No one expects them to do anything that's too out of the ordinary. Just come in, know the job, do the job, and win the game, and that's all that's expected of them. So, you never know. Look at that's come in. Zara has come in goal and remained in there. She's done well. So, there's a chance there for everybody.
And Al, have you seen some of the reserves game, or you haven't had the chance yet? But if you do, would you ever go and see them?
So I have seen the reserves on the rare occasions that they played at Champion Hill. I haven't yet seen them on out in at the back of the Greendale end, but I was at the now infamous League Cup final farce at Mason last May, where
Yeah.
the ridiculous overreactions of one man, tried to ruin a day that the players and the sports were looking forward to. So because of that, I was disappointed not to be able to go to the first game since that against Clapton recently, but I am keen to go and see the reserves play at Clapton. In a couple of weeks' time. The problem is that it does clash with the Norwich home game, which I also want to see. So I will have to make a decision on which one of those to attend. But it's always interesting to see the reserve team and try and yourself identify a player that you think could make that step up to the first team. And it's good that there is that pathway, and that that although the reserves are a separate entity in a separate league, they are still being looked at by the club as potential first team players if they're deemed to be good enough.
Yeah. And well, obviously I was going to say to Richie, when the first team say their season is done, would you ever go and watch their game?
Just for me, yeah. Yeah, well, that's something that we'll have to endeavour to do. So yeah, whenever we have a chance, we'll get down and watch how they perform. And it's important that we know what we have and what's available to us. So you always got to be aware of what's going on. So yeah, when we can, we'll get over and we'll watch them, and we'll keep an eye. But also have a close link to the reserve team management team, and they keep us informed on who's playing well, what's happening, how they're all doing, and if we have players that go and play with the reserves, we get feedback on what's happening there too. So, we're all in the loop of what's happening. So it's working well at the moment.
Yeah. And there is a question. Actually, before answering the question, I'd like to say, regarding what's it, the AFC Sudbury match that I didn't went to see because I was doing work, but I have saw what I said earlier, they done very well, even if I didn't see what happened. But when I got there, I think this was about 2 hours late, and only Zara and Lauren was there. So I asked them, how they went, and they said, it was very tough, but got a win in the end. And Zara was happy enough to have a clean sheet. So that's good for her. For any goalies, love the clean sheet. Not a clean sheet is a little bit different or difficult. And I've got this question. Well, a little shout out from my friend named Connor, or I'll call him Vardy because he plays like Jamie Vardy. Said, hello, and he asked this question, what you really got into football. I think we have pretty much covered what everyone really got into football, and everyone has a passion where they come from. Like Richie fell in love with football when he was growing up in Belvedere, yep,
Yeah,
and.
over there, yeah.
And well, I want to say long story short, but I say from there he joined Shamrock Rovers before joining some other clubs like Aberdeen and what was the English clubs you joined?
Oldham,
All of them.
Oldham, yeah, Oldham.
All of them. Yeah. But he cut his career very short, and here he is right now. I mean, obviously, he went through coaching courses before becoming a fitness instructor and coaching one-on-one. Best person on the planet you can only hire if you want need him. So, ring him up.
Thanks for the plug.
You're welcome. And, I wanted to give a shout out to the German fan who went to the game, but he was flying back to Germany and had listened to the podcast and said he really loved it. And hoping if he listens to this, I think he definitely will love it. And Lawrence, I met him. He's the members of the Men's Supporters Trust Association. Said he will put a good word out on this podcast to many people out there that can, lead me to somewhere. And to be honest, I think that's pretty much, we can bring this podcast to an end. So I want to say that's enough drinks for now. Let's hang up cups up or bottle for tonight, gents. It's been a really grand and crack evening. So thank you, Richie, Joe, and Big Al for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely pleasure, Johnny. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you, people listening back live. So now you can listen back to this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. That will fall around the first few days of April Fool's Day or later, along with the 5 episodes if you have listened already. But if you haven't, please listen back so you're up to speed. If you don't, then I'm coming to get you Irish style. Just kidding. As long as it's not with Gaelic football or hurling. You don't want to get any into that. Again, I'm joking. So if you really want to come on and join in for another spicy talk, the next episode will be on the Monday the 27th of April, and it's a belated Easter egg surprise, so I'm not saying what it is, so you have to find out later. To get in touch on Instagram is @SpiceOnTheHill, DHFCW. On X/Twitter, it's simply @SpiceOnTheHill. Alternatively, you can email me, Johnny_Hourigan, that's pronounced Hourigan, but HOURIGAN @hotmail.co.uk with the subject Spicy Podcast. And I'm your host, Johnny Hourigan, aka a little leprechaun that led you to the pot of gold over the rainbow, the fields of Evereye. And remember, over the hills where you are, let's keep it burning hot. Irish style. Round of applause, everyone. And I'll see you on the 27th of April. So, good night.
Launcher.
Yes.